And welcome, Dr Elise Dallas, a GP with a special interest in menopause. Now, you have been conducting an experiment upon yourself. You are now in perimenopause, you are starting HRT, and you've decided to take it upon yourself to have a go at all of them and give us an assessment. So tell us, why did you decide to do this, and what have you started with, and what have you found?
Well, as with, all of my consultations. So first of all, thank you for having me on, Fiona. And this is a brilliant way to actually release the results, I guess, because otherwise it was going to have to be a long, tedious video. So thank you. But basically, at the end of my, I'd be conversing with my menopausal patients. I'd give them the option. Transdermal estrogen, as we know, that's gold standard. It's body identical, has less risk of clots. And they'd say, well, which one do you recommend, doctor? And I'd have to really just go from, what I'd read about, what sounded quite nice at that time. Obviously, I've been consulting menopause patients for the last few years, but I've only started my own menopausal HRT journey about 3 or 4 months ago when I started estrogel. So I'd only had experience with estrogel, and previous to that, nothing. So and obviously we've got all of the, there we go. Yours is in a slightly different bottle. Is mine older or younger? It's gone through a few little changes. But obviously there's been, stock issues in terms of getting hold of these products. So even through that and dose comparisons, and we've got that great chart for dose comparisons, but it was just really about actually, what does it feel like to change, your patches? What did it feel like to remember it every day? And so I know I haven't tried it for long enough to probably see any differences in symptom control, because I did each one for a week. But if I was going to do it for 3 months each time, we'd be doing this. We'd be doing this live in a year's time. So what I did is I tried. Well, I'd already done a few months of estrogel. I was on 2 pumps, so that's kind of the medium dose. Then I tried Sandrina, which come in little sachets. And I took the 1 milligram dose, which is the equivalent of 2 pumps. Then I tried the Lenzetto spray, which, as you can see, is this. And I think it was like 2 to 3 pumps. And then the only 2 patches I could get hold of at the time was the Estradot and the Everol. And so that's what I went through at the time. And currently I've now got an Estradot patch on at the moment. So I continued also trying it since I did my last trial, because so various reasons I haven't really got one finite winner, and I have got pros and cons of each, so we can go through a little bit and run through it. So with the gels, obviously, so initially, just what I want to say is that gold standard is transdermal, because it avoids the liver and therefore avoids triggering clotting factors. And so
I just stop you there for a minute. There was another one of these. This is why we need education. And another message this morning from a woman saying, I've been told I can't have HRT because I'm a smoker and it's going to increase my risk of clots. No, this still happen?
So yes, if that was the old conjugated type of HRT, which is oral, because that's synthetic, as we know, and there's a similar reason to why you can't take the contraceptive pill if you're age 35 and smoke, and because of the age and the smoking, and it puts you at higher risk of clotting, because synthetic estrogens go into your bloodstream, as in that you oral swallow them, they go through your liver and they trigger clotting factors. So although it's small, there is a small increase in clots. So we want to avoid that altogether. So now, just because we know this knowledge, why not offer body identical transdermal estrogens first line? I'm really not doing a risk assessment at the age of 50 or, late 40s when I'm often starting these, as to whether they're higher risk of clots. I'm going to go straight to the transdermal route because we know it works better. The thing, I did a reel actually a couple of days ago about body identical, bioidentical and synthetics, because I think all of those terms get a bit confused as well. There's nothing wrong with synthetics. It just means that the molecule isn't quite the same as our own natural hormones. And so it doesn't quite fit the receptor. It does the job, but you may then experience, and these are the two things that you need to consider as an individual, greater risk of side effects. So for things like progesterones, you might get bleeding problems, you might get moodiness and tired. And for estrogens, breast tenderness, headaches. And so these are the side effects you might, which, are bothersome, but not life-threatening. But the other thing that is important, you might get increase of risk factors. And so that's risk factors of clotting, risk factors of increase in the case of synthetic progesterones, very small increase in breast cancer, and increased in bleeding issues. So it's just worth considering. Synthetics aren't all bad, but if you've got additional risk factors in your own personal history of clots or breast cancer risk, then I would definitely be going for the body identical. So the transdermal estrogens are all body identical. And the fact that they go through the skin means that they avoid the liver. So these are but you can then, but once I get to that point in the consultation, I'm like, well, gels or patches. And I really, really do think, and people are going to roll their eyes and go, it is down to the individual, because it really depends on what your lifestyle is like. So I will give you my personal opinion in terms of just the application. And then what I thought we could do is actually go into the facts surrounding, because other people have actually done audits on the absorption rate, and really it's quite interesting. What they've concluded is the fact that, essentially it doesn't matter what type of transdermal estrogen you have on you. The blood levels often don't correlate to the dose applied. And so therefore, no matter what it is that you're applying, it needs to be able to control the symptoms. Yes, we can come into at later points when it might be appropriate to do estradiol levels. But let's just start with my my mini trial. So first of all, I was on estradiol. So I'm on 2 pumps, medium dose. It's really light. If you can see it, nice and clear. It's like an alco gel. It rubs in really easily. I'm just going to put that on the side there. I'm going to be overdosing myself with estrogen a little bit, but you would do it on the upper arms and down and inner thighs. Now, this is great, but the problem is that I think for me, if I was doing more than 2 pumps, so the maximum licensed dose is to go up to 4 pumps, and you'd be losing a whole arm. Each pump is quite a lot of gel. And so it would often be, wow, the whole arm was being used. Then I'd have the other one where in wintertime, it's not that pleasant to be walking around. It takes at least 5 minutes to dry. It takes quite a long time. But once it's dry, that's fine. You can put on your clothes. But there's no way I'm getting that done in the morning. So then it would be the evening, the rush. I'd suddenly be in bed and be, oh God, I've forgotten to put the gel on. I'd have to get up, put it on, and then half of it probably go on the bedclothes because I'm exhausted. So for me, it depends how busy your life is. That was a bit of a downside. It's it does take a little bit longer to dry. You can't put anything on like sun cream or other moisturizers for at least half an hour. I know you read somewhere, Fiona, that actually, well, what was it that you thought that maybe there was an increased absorption within half an hour of
No, he said if you apply a moisturizer, I will find it. I will find it.
Yeah.
If you applied a moisturizer an hour after putting the gel on, there was increased absorption. But I need to now go back and find where I read that, because I can't remember. So
I can't find it. But either way, you have to wait 30 minutes. Then you have to wait 2 hours for washing, which, to be honest, was never an issue for me because I'd always do it after my shower. Interestingly enough, it peaks at about 3 to 5 days. So if you're applying it, and when you stop it, it's completely out of your system from 3 to 6 days. But the pros are it's light, it's easy, it's clear, and it's daily. And I got into a habit of doing it. Okay, I'd forget a couple of times, but that was fine. Now, the Sandrina, I loved. The Sandrina, tiny little sachets, brilliant for popping in your handbag if you're staying the night somewhere, you're traveling for work. And oh my gosh, you just tear it off. I'll just show a little bit now. It's a small amount of gel, again, really clear. It's exactly the same, but again, I mean, it's dry within probably less than a minute. Probably about a minute completely. So for me, that was so convenient. It was just one sachet. I didn't have to worry. I could just lie in bed, just do it quickly. So I loved it. And it was just much easier to remember because of that fact.
And it's very easy to do hands-free with the Sandrina. This is what I do, because people talk about not getting it on your hands because you don't have to wash it into the waterway and things like that. So they'll use the lid of the estradiol bottle.
Exactly. I'm just going to look at the cap. Often I can't find the cap now, but what some people do with the estradiol is actually squirt it onto the cap, so they don't get it on the hands, which then you have to wash afterwards and not touch any pets or animals or anything, and then use that to rub it in. But again, to me, it's a little bit of a faff, but it's doable. It's not, really hard.
Well, I just squirt this on my inner thigh, and I sort of like make a couple of lines of it, and then rub the thighs together a few times, and that's it, really. Fortunately, I don't have a thigh gap, so that's not an issue.
Actually, it's one advantage of not having a thigh gap. It's brilliant. Excellent. I'd be the same. Walk from the bathroom to the bedroom and it's already absorbed, hey? Yeah.
I have a question here for you. Jennifer is asking, if you need 3 pumps worth, would that be one and 1.5 sachets? Is that 1.5 sachets?
Yes, it would be. Yes, because you could, or you can get them in, so you can get them 1 milligram
or
0.5. So yes, so it'd be 1.5 or half a sachet. And the other thing to note that with these gels, if you are on a higher dose than 2 pumps, it's often good to spread. So do 2 pumps in the morning, 2 pumps in the evening. So because you kind of get a bit more even dosing. I mean, again, that would add another complex thing to remember for me if I was on 4 pumps. So, and it covers quite a lot. So you could do all 4 at once, but the advice is to split it. So I wouldn't get too caught up in it, because as we're going to come on and discuss, the blood levels of estradiol are going like this anyway. Okay, you might add it in the morning and it goes up a little bit, but if you do all of the lot, and that's the only way you're going to remember, it's better to get it in and on than forgetting about your dose and going back down to half dose. Okay, so the other one I tried, which is a spray, so Lenzetto. Now this, so you have to prime it by sort of squirting it with the lid on several times, and then it says 2 or 3 for the equivalent, 2 or 3 sprays for the equivalent of 2 pumps of estradiol. So I just did 3 because, as you can see, I don't know if you can see a little shiny mist, and you do it on the forearm here, so it's very different. And that literally, it takes less than a minute to dry. It's almost dry. And so I found that really easy to remember. The only thing is I was like, oh my God, it feels like I don't know, there's something about rubbing a gel in. It just makes you feel like you've taken your HRT. Whereas this literally felt like I was squirting some water on my arm. But as we'll come to next, it's really interesting in terms of what the research found in terms of the blood levels and the symptoms. So that was Lenzetto, which I think is really popular, especially actually sometimes for the older postmenopausal. I think that would be really suitable because it's easy. You don't have to be rubbing up down the arms. It's a small amount. Often older women are on a bit lower dose, and this just keeps it nice and steady. The other interesting fact about this is that it's actually got a chemical. I forget its name, but when you spray it, the reason it's got this chemical is it binds underneath and kind of keeps a little store, and then it releases over 24 hours, which is the other. So that's the other interesting. Yeah.
So psychologically, you didn't like that one particularly because you didn't feel like you were mentally. You didn't feel like you were getting. You didn't.
Yeah, but otherwise, now reading on all of the studies about it and thinking, oh, okay, well, that's just normal to feel like it doesn't really absorb, but actually the symptom control is still there. I think if I was on higher doses, I probably wouldn't go for this. But if I'm on a sort of medium dose, because the maximum dose is 3 pumps of this, then I would. I really like this, as long as you're remembering it every day. Then,
can you go over, because you just said the maximum is the 3 squirts, but if you need more,
this is that. So I mean, that's just in terms of estrogen in general, in terms of the estradiol sprays. So Let me cover that when we go to the blood levels and symptom control, because that's a big discussion at the moment. And essentially, it's often to do with your symptom control. So if your symptoms are being controlled, we always want, I mean, with any medicine, we always want you on the lowest dose. But if you need to go higher because it's not controlling your symptoms, and it's, if you have vasomotor symptoms, you're lucky in a way, because that's a really, really good indicator of whether you've got enough estrogen on board. Because because hot flushes are controlled by estrogen only, whereas a lot of the other symptoms, like, you know, brain fog, aching body, anxiety, insomnia, they can be affected by other hormones, but also lifestyle, what we eat, you know, how much exercise. So vasomotor symptoms, if you have them, is a sort of almost a good barometer of whether you're getting enough HRT. So, and that's what they often use in the studies about whether the vasomotor symptoms were controlled. So that's the Lenzetto. Then I tried the Estradot, which, if you look, and I'm going to compare these side by side, actually, rather than going from, because they were the only two patches. I mean, I can't even get it out. It's so small. It's tiny. It's lovely and small. And if you look at the Everol, it is quite large. And, you know, someone said it's literally like having a crisp packet stuck to your leg. Now, or a plastic bag. But, I mean, it's doing the same job. And I know Estradot has not been in stock. So this will do the job. Whether I'm pleased with it is another thing, because they both they both stuck on. So that I think the key with these and the sprays is to prepare your skin, because lots of people saying, "Oh, I'm not absorbing. Well, if you're spraying on and rubbing it on like I sometimes was, and then getting into bed and half it going on your bedclothes, or it wasn't straight after a shower and you hadn't exfoliated, you've got to look at these simple measures that you can take. So the best time to apply is on warm skin. So whether it's out of a shower, you're rubbing so you get the blood supply, preferably exfoliated if you're having, you know, you're thinking you're having sticking problems. Dry. Some people even use a little bit of an alco wipe to get rid of excess oil before, and then stick it on. And when you've stuck it on, I'd be holding my hand to it on either patch, just so it's firmly, you know, the adhesive sticks with the warmth. I did that with both of them, and I did it properly. And so they both stuck for the full, you know, range of activities that I generally do. So I go cold water swimming, I go to the gym, I was cycling, I was going to Christmas parties, you know, having showers daily. So, and they both stuck very well in place. Both very easy to remove, but obviously looking at the size, this one left much more adhesive. Now, I thought this one
get like a little black line around the outside.
Exactly. And I find if it's once, but you're doing this twice a week. And I did find the exfoliating glove actually more, you know, I tried the different types of ways. So exfoliating glove with a bit of shower gel rubbing, I found that quite sore. You can just do it with a dry flannel. You know, I think with these ones, fine. Baby oil worked best. And that's what I'd often been, you know, letting my patients know. But it's still left a sort of little wheel, you know, of redness on both of them. And that's sometimes to do with the actual just make. So often maybe a different make might, you know, there's estroderm patches, still got the same hormone. The only interesting thing about these two is if you've got an allergy to soy, then you might be better off with the Estradot, because Everol you might be better off with the Everol, because Estradot is made from soy. So the estradiol is from soy, whereas this is from the Mexican yam. So that's the only downside if you're fancying the smaller dot, but you've got allergy or an intolerance to soy. But they both still got the body identical estradiol. So I think the other thing about patches is that you have to remember every, 3 to 4 days. And so sometimes it's almost easier to remember something daily, just as you go to bed. But people set their alarms and you get into a rhythm of things. And I know people are very happy with the dot.
I would never remember. I mean, even I ignore the alarms that I set on.
I've got alarms. I would have alarms going off for everything. It's
They just become white noise in the end. So I was sort of like, no, it would never work for me because I would never remember what day of the week it was.
Yeah. So for me, it just came down to, do you know what? I'm going to finish my patch trial because I'm just still seeing, you know, how much adhesive is really left, and I'm trying it on different parts of my body. I was only like willing to share the film with my upper thigh as opposed to my belly or bum. So I will finish the trial of the patches and see how much adhesive they leave. But to be honest, I will probably personally, if I feel it's helping my symptoms, I will probably continue with Sandrina, just as on a personal level, because I felt like it was small enough to rub in and feel like it was doing something. It's easy, you know, it allows the flexibility of me staying the night somewhere or moving or not forgetting it. I can keep it by my bed and I know I've done it.
And of course, from my own selfish point of view here, having gone to the chemist yesterday to pick up my E-string to find that it is not in existence.
I know. I'm prescribing them, and yeah, everyone's coming back.
Yeah.
This is for everyone.
Do not make me track down another woman who's got one of these and remove it from her, because I will. I know that's an assault, but it comes to that point where you just think it's got to be done. It's got to be done. Yes,
I know, and I don't know. I think they're coming back next week. I don't know. I've heard rumors, but maybe not. Maybe they've gone. I don't know. But this is a vaginal estrogen, which is different to these gels that we're talking about now. But yes, E-string is, well, it's very, if you know, you keep it in for 3 months and that's it. You can forget about it. So,
yes.
So for my own personal, Sandrina wins. You know, I've still got pots of the estrogel, so I will still be using them up, and you know, it's not that bad. It's just that if I were to choose, it's just a lot easier to remember and to apply. Now, when I was looking at you know, transdermal estrogens, because as a doctor, often people are like, I want my blood levels measured. You know, why should we, you know, can you just see if I'm absorbing? And I think it's really good to understand that, first of all, when we're going in our perimenopause, our own levels are doing this constantly. All the HRT does, the HRT doesn't just come in and block those, you know, the ups and the downs, the cyclical ups and downs, the fluctuations. What it does is it brings the lower level up to about here. So when you're measuring, and this is on a daily basis, hourly basis. So if I measure your estradiol now and I measure it in 3 days' time, then it may be completely different. It might be up here or down here. The other things that also impact estradiol, for example, is whether you are, if you put a patch on, it'll be quite high that day. So what we always recommend is if you're wearing a patch, do it the day before the patch change. That'd be on day 2 or 3. If you're doing the gel, then it has to be on, you take the blood from the other arm that you put the gel on, and at least 4 hours after, or preferably before you put your gel on. Really, gels and patches are the only ones where the blood levels are slightly useful in a sense, because even Lenzetto, because of this dosing under the skin, it's not very reliable. And then oral, if you ever did take synthetic oral estrogen for whatever reason, because some people do, because they find that they're not absorbing transdermally, so end up going on an oral. If it's safe to do so, and they don't have any risk of clots. So oral, again, not great, because it's all to do with digestion when you ate, you know, how much well you absorb. And what they found was, even when they did all these tests, is that, you know, you could have 2 women, you and me, Fiona, we take exactly the same estrogen, clean our skin, do all of that. But because of, say, your blood vessels, your, you know, your skin type, the closeness of the cells together, your absorption, for some reason, differs from mine. We would therefore potentially have different blood levels, but both of us our symptoms are being controlled. But we'd have different blood levels despite taking the same dose and the same route. So that's what they found. And so if you do end up thinking, look, I just don't know if I'm absorbing it, because let's say you're on the maximum dose of a transdermal and you're saying none of my symptoms are being controlled, fine, we might take it, but with those precautions, you know, day before the patch change, or, you know, from the different arm, and we would see it. If it's what we're aiming for, and it's again difficult, it's not like thyroid or, you know, diabetes where we're aiming for a particular blood range, but if we're aiming for anything in the bloods, it would be around between 200 and 800 picomillimoles per liter. So 200 to 800, 1,000-ish, because that's it's when it was in the menstrual cycle level before we had our menopause. If you find that you're coming back with 3,000, still no reason to panic, to be honest, because it may have been that, you know, I had one woman who came back and she said, oh, it was in the 3,000, but she'd been putting her Linzetto here and got it done immediately afterwards. And so what I would do if it is in extremely high levels, I would repeat it, try and do it at the same time, but again, taking away all those mitigating factors that might increase it. And then if it's still really high, but her symptoms are controlled, I'd bring her down a little bit on the dose that she's at. If she's having absorption issues and you just think she's not feeling any of this, then it might be better to try a different preparation. It might, and some people, we even do go to oral synthetics because they just absorb it better sometimes. Yeah. So it really is down to the individual.
Even this morning I was reading somewhere and a woman was saying, my fingers are hurting, I'm going to up my dose from 5 to 6 pumps because my fingers are hurting. And you think, okay, what about vitamin D? So, or a whole bunch of other things. But you go, okay, if her symptoms, if she thinks that this is a symptom that's not being controlled, she's on 5 or 6 pumps already, then is that a place where you probably actually start to think, we need to try something different with you?
Yes, I'd be taking her bloods, possibly. I mean, it's actually better if you're postmenopausal, because even though your estrogen's low, it hasn't got those fluctuations. So it's got slightly better. It's not amazing, but a little bit better at predicting how much estrogen you might be absorbing. But again, it's always to do with the symptoms, not really the levels. We're not controlling it on the levels. But with her, I would just be trying different types of estrogen. But I would also be looking at, you know, if we're talking about vasomotor symptoms, as long as we've looked for other causes of symptoms, which is why I suggest blood tests when you very first have symptoms, because these symptoms may not be caused by perimenopause. That, you know, often things like thyroid disease goes up in perimenopause, you know, vitamin deficiencies, fatigue, all of these vague symptoms. It's sometimes difficult to say, yep, it's just this. Anemia, as we know, you know, bleeding in the perimenopause goes up. You get often heavier periods closer together, so you start becoming iron deficient. And this is where I wanted to bring in, when we were discussing, Fiona, that people will often, when they have their bloods done, be reported as normal. And what I want people to do is ask for the actual ferritin amount, because ferritin will be reported as normal if it's around 20-ish. But anything lower than 60 or 70 is actually low for a woman, and they'll be experiencing symptoms of anemia, iron deficiency anemia, such as thinning hair and fatigue. So we want to aim for above that. I mean, mine was, I had these classics, you know, shorter together, heavier periods at the beginning of the year, did my ferritin, and I think it was 20. They reported it as normal until I said, what is it? You know, it's borderline. And yeah, so that's what I want people to take away. And if then that's safe for them to go and get over-the-counter iron, again, not greatly absorbed, but to take that, it's actually better to take a high dose alternative days, because the gut doesn't like iron. With vitamin C, often you'll find that iron preparations do actually include vitamin C to help absorption, but if they don't, take it with a little glass of orange juice or something like that, and take highest dose, but alternate days. And you should slowly come up to normal levels within about 3 months, but increase it in their diets. But yeah, so if you've ruled out other causes for all of those other symptoms, and you know, if it's vasomotor symptoms and they're still not being controlled, then something's going on in the preparation that woman is taking, and I'd be changing the preparation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if the other vague symptoms of tiredness, I'd be looking for other causes, particularly lifestyle as well.
Sleep apnea. I'm just going to turn the light on because it suddenly got incredibly dark again here. I think it's about to pour with
Yeah,
rain.
we had a big thunderstorm a minute ago.
Yeah.
All the light pouring in this way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's you're about to completely disappear in darkness, which probably wouldn't be a bad thing. Now, just going back to this binder in the Lenzetto, I'm kind of intrigued by that actually, because that seems like a very, very sensible thing to have something that is nice and slowly releasing over a period of time. Why is it just them that have got that?
I don't know. Now I've got the chemical. It's called octisalate, which helps to form a depot store of estradiol under the skin, and then it releases slowly for the next 24 hours. So it's a reservoir. Yeah, interesting, hey?
It is, because people have often said to they say, don't put it on the same spot. And then others will say, no, you've got to put your HRT on the same spot because you want that sort of that depot or reservoir in the fatty tissue underneath.
Specifically, Lenzetto is not. You've got to move along the arm with each spray. Yeah, and then a different arm. But yes, it does. It causes confusion. I had someone ask me, well, why can't I, with the estradiol, sorry, it's, it says from the shoulder up all the way down on the outer arm. Why can't you put it on the inner arm? And the only evidence I could find for not doing that is actually because it increases painful breasts, which is a side effect of estrogen. Yeah. Not necessarily breast cancer, because as we know, it's being absorbed into the system, but it just apparently increases that. So I can imagine well, I've experienced the amount of gel that it takes. If you'd have to be going around a bit like a monkey, letting your arms dry if it was on the inside of your arm. But yeah, estrogen likes sort of fatty areas. So that's why it's your inner thighs, your bottom, anywhere below the waist, really, to rub in.
Well, it's going to love me then. Couple of questions over here. I'll deal first of all with the Lenzetto one. What you've changed to it? What did you miss? You didn't miss anything except for the fact that it has a very clever ingredient in it that allows it to sort of bind and form a sort of a depot under the skin that gives you a sort of slow release, which is amazingly good. And the other question is looking at the if you've got low iron levels, you've been taking iron and a tablet. I'll just read this rather than trying to paraphrase it. What do you do if your iron levels don't increase after 3 months? I'm on an iron 1 tablet and I'm on my second 3-month cycle, and it's not moving. Is this then?
Well, loads of things, because if you've got a tap on and the blood's coming out, you've got to switch that tap off. So if I don't know whether this lady is consistently bleeding a little bit every day, so therefore we might add in a progesterone, for example. I don't know what she's on, but we might be adding something in to stick that blood to the wall. So we've got to turn the tap off. Yep. So that's the first thing. The second thing is looking at her diet. Is she vegan? Where is she getting her iron sources from? The third thing is she taking the maximum amount per day? Some people, it's just not very well absorbed iron. So if that's not working for her, I'd be choosing a different type of iron. Some people take the liquid iron and find that they absorb that better. So maybe taking the highest dose of the liquid iron, again with vitamin C, which is still only, a glass of orange juice or whatever it might be, or, satsuma, alternate days, because the gut just doesn't like it. And seeing if that helps. If it's really, it depends how bad it is. And it depends if she's talking about iron and whether it's made her anemic as well, because your ferritin will start to come down, and then your hemoglobin, which are the red blood cells that carry around oxygen, but you'll still get the symptoms from the low ferritin or iron.
Yeah. She's at 210 milligram tablet, she's saying. But yeah, this is the interesting thing, isn't it? Because, as anybody who's been following me for a year will know, I have bled for an entire year.
I know.
Got to the point actually where, hair getting much thinner, falling out. And I was really tired, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd be sitting here and yawning and, I live on the first floor and I walk up the stairs and I get to the top of the stair and I go, God, my legs are tired. How can my legs be tired walking up one flight of stairs? So
I know exactly.
Yeah, a GP friend of mine basically said, go, for God's sake, go and get yourself some iron tablets. So I did, and literally within about 3 days, I could walk up the stairs without my legs feeling tired.
Wow. So you're absorbing it very well then. Because there's other people that have iron transfusions, but there are certain conditions that you need that under. These places will have to take a blood test. I think if it has to be under 30, certain will, and see whether it's appropriate. But and that can help some people, but you wouldn't get that on the NHS unless you are seriously iron deficient. So just,
even with things like, dietary sources, and this goes to a question that's just come in as well. Dietary sources, people say, eat lots of spinach. It's full of iron, but again, it's non-heme iron. It's not iron that's absorbed well unless you whack a bunch of vitamin C in it. So the question over here is, why is vitamin C required to absorb iron?
Oh God, I don't know. All I know I know it's got something to do with the receptor and carrying it across, and it enables it. They sort of work together. So, but I don't know the mechanism. Sorry.
Yeah. But things to think then, if you're having a salad with lots of spinach leaves in it, or something, whack in some mandarin or some capsicum.
But also broccoli. That's got the vitamin C as well in it. So lots of iron containing. Gosh, I've got a bit of flash of lightning. I don't know if you saw it. Lots of actual vegetables that do have high iron will actually naturally have the vitamin C. Oh, you can hear the thunder.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, because you kind of think, well, I'm doing the right thing, but then nothing seems to change. But it does take quite a long while, doesn't it, for it to generally get your levels back up to somewhere, especially if you're
about 3 months. It's quite, it does take a long time, and you have to be consistent. Again, it's one of those things you have to remember. Am I going to remember my iron tablet every night? I've got so many other supplements and HRT and fiber and my collagen and magnesium and all of these other things. I think it's about getting in a habit so you remember to take it and turning it off.
Yeah. Going back slightly to what you've been doing, obviously another question has come here in this place into that, because you've changed so much. And at the moment, a lot of people are obviously having to change their HRT because of shortages on various types of things. The question here is, she's just changed from a patch to Lenzetto, and some of her symptoms are coming back. How do people handle this when they're sort of constantly changing and their symptoms do tend to reappear?
Yeah, I mean, if it depends again on the symptoms. If it's vasomotor, classic estrogen, I would probably just go, especially with the Lenzetto, because the maximum dose spray isn't quite the equivalent of the maximum of the others. So you could possibly increase. Obviously, this has to be discussed with your doctor. I don't want to start. But if the symptoms that are only down to estrogen and vasomotor up, then I think that's probably a dose. If it's other ones that you personally classically attribute to estrogen, then probably the level needs increasing, because people absorb different from a patch to a gel. Like I said at the beginning, 1 week wasn't really enough to see, oh gosh, have my symptoms come back? But to be fair, it almost is enough, because estrogen is out of your system within a couple of days. So I think we've got to remember that estrogen is not this really dangerous medication that's going to linger around for ages. Once you stop taking HRT, it's out. That's it. So although I only took it for 1 week, I didn't notice any symptom changes at all. I didn't notice any bleeding issues, which often happens. So when we change anyway from someone, from a different dose to a different route, the absorption might be different. So you might have experienced bleeding issues. I've got a Marina coil in for the progesterone cover. But I still have breakthrough bleeding. So it's not like because I have that, I have no bleeding, but I didn't experience any bleeding changing from one to another. And so, and I didn't notice any difference in my symptoms. But if you're noticing it and you're going from one to the other, clearly you're not absorbing, probably, and therefore you might need to increase that, but in consultation with your doctor.
Give it a period of time, though, to settle and adjust?
But unless these flashes are coming back overnight, it's clearly a dose issue or something's going on. But go back to basics. Are you applying the gel, or are you applying the patch on clean, dry skin, letting it dry? All of those issues. Honestly, some people just haven't really thought about how they're applying this, and they're putting it on us. Oh, yeah, put it on. Then I put my moisturizer on, and they haven't really read the packet, and they haven't really done it, and it's worked in the past, and now suddenly they're changing, and only now it's become apparent that they're not rubbing it in properly, or it's on cold skin because we're now in winter, so it might be cold, and there's it's silly things like that. But if that's all been controlled for, go back and possibly look at having your dose increased on the one that is available.
I had a question and it's now gone. And let me just look back because it came here and I thought I would remember. Apparently you mentioned collagen. I missed that. Clearly, I'm a good listener. You mentioned collagen. Are there any downsides to taking this? As I've read different views and have ended up unsure about whether or not to take it.
Yeah, so I did a little reel about this, I don't know, about a month or so ago, because so the jury is still out in terms of actual evidence, but if we wait around for because those that you're going to test on have also added in other supplements, they're also maybe on HRT. And so if you try and find any trials that compare someone who's taking collagen and not collagen, they're not like for like. We don't know, you often, and I can't say always, but often someone who might be taking collagen, they might be doing something more with their lifestyle. There might be, there's lots of different reasons, but there is evidence for improving bone health and tendon health and getting to that point. So therefore, and lots of other people, just verbally say it's improved my hair, it's improved my skin. So it is an extremely expensive supplement and nice to have. So what I suggested in my reel was, if you can afford it and you find it I found one on a Black Friday deal. That's literally what it was. I thought, fine, I'll try it. And I have it in my coffee and it's tasteless. And to be honest, I took it for my plantar fasciitis. I haven't noticed any difference. And it could be the fact that my skin's a bit better, but it could be also my HRT. So it's really difficult to tell what's the difference.
It is. Now, when you mention sports injuries and things like that, it's generally, there's a specific type of collagen called an anthrid collagen, apparently, which is the one that works quite well for those types of injuries. So collagens are not all born equal, apparently. So I mean, you've got your marine ones, you've got your bovine ones, you've got your chicken bits, you've got anything under the sun pretty much. So it does, doing a bit of research on what type you're actually taking helps. But the one that's studied for particularly for joints and ligaments is anthrid, and that's in Totally Derma. Now, I made the very lovely Anita from Totally Derma put her money where her mouth was and do a study, because I was doing a chat with her one day and she said, I'm getting all of these women coming back and saying that there's that it's working wonders for their vaginal atrophy. And I was like, oh, come on, Anita. If you've got to say that, you need to put your money where your mouth is. So I made her give me a bunch of pots. I know this is exactly what I say. This never ever trust a small study or whatever, but nevertheless, I made her give me a bunch of pots. I found 10 women on HRT with vaginal issues, made them use this for 3 months, and then got a report back at the end of it, comparing what they were like at the beginning with what they were like at the end. And yes, 8 out of 10 of them said that it actually improved their vaginal atrophy symptoms, which is kind of interesting. And they also anecdotally as well said, but the thing is with it, it also had 20 other different types of proteins in it. It also had hyaluronic acid. It had a whole bunch of stuff in there, so it may not have necessarily been the collagen. And some will argue, like my friend Dr. Ginny, who would say, if your gut is absorbing a molecule that large, then you've got serious health issues.
Right.
So I don't.
If you're breaking it down as well, and whether it gets to that cellular level. So I think, as with anything like this, it used to be like with the glucosamine for aching joints, people used to say, should I get it? It's like, try it for 3 months. I would always give anything a try for 3 months, as long as it's not harmful. If it suits you and you can afford it, continue.
Yeah, so I think there is more evidence now actually saying glucosamine it may actually help in some areas. Back to a patch here question is, should a patch not be applied to cold skin? Basically what you were saying before was just give it a good rub, get a bit of blood supply there to it if it's a cold day.
And I read somewhere else on someone else's thing, do not apply it to warm, hot skin.
So
I think you've got to yes, exactly. So you've got to know how your skin is. If it's really cold, then I would definitely give it a little bit of a tap before and a rub, just a smack, just bring the blood to it, and stick it on and just hold it down. It just helps adhesive, the adhesive stick. That's the sticking bit. So, with both of my patches, they stuck equally well. I had no problem with that. It was just removing them.
Yeah. I heard rumors of collagen and breast cancer. I could not see how collagen could cause breast cancer, given it's in your bones. There are 3 or 4 different types of it within your skin, your tendons. I mean, your whole body is a
A lot of rumors with breast cancer, and I haven't heard that one. So
no,
sorry.
either. No. What collagen have you tried? Are you not sure who I'm speaking with? So this is Elise Dallas. And the person who I was talking with was Anita from Totally Derma. Lumps on my fingers. I don't know about that one. Lumps on my fingers.
Maybe you were talking about with the person with cold fingers. I don't know.
Don't know. Yeah. And thread, ANTHRED, I think. Heard dumps of the estrogen. Heard it dumps the estrogen when using a patch in a bath. I don't understand that.
Maybe removing estrogen patch in the bath is a good way. She was meaning. I don't know.
Don't know. But I guess, if you had baths and things, is there a risk of it coming off?
No.
Soaking
Well,
for a long
there shouldn't be. And for me, there wasn't. You are allowed to bath, swim, shower with a patch on. That's why it's good to have that adhesive, and try not to, if you're exfoliating, just don't get if you start lifting the edge of it off, then it obviously doesn't have adhesion. Yeah. Should we touch on a tiny bit on oh, sorry, you're going to say that. I was going to say
some of the patches you can chop in half, can't you, if you want to, if you're sort of halfway between. Is it the estradiol that you can chop in half, the large one? Not the little one?
The Everol.
Yeah. Is that the big one? Yeah.
Yes. Everol's the big one, the plastic bag. But I was just going to say, should we just mention progesterone or progestogens if they're synthetic?
Please do.
Just because Fiona and I, when we were discussing this, we both got a Mirena coil, if you don't mind me saying. And I said, well, and obviously if you've got a uterus and you're taking transdermal estrogen, you have to protect it with a progesterone. And the reason being is, imagine the estrogen is the fertilizer, you're growing a nice thick womb. If you don't cut it down or keep it thin, then the chances of one of those cells that are, multiplying, turning cancerous is higher. Not very high, but still higher, and we have to keep it thin. And so that's where progesterone comes in. It keeps it nice and thin, either, by taking it cyclically and giving you a period, so you shred it, or having it continuously at a low dose permanently in there. Like the lawnmower, I guess. So that the Mirena coil is, it's a little coil. It's got progesterone in it. It is a synthetic. So progesterones also come in synthetic body identical. The only body identical one that we have in this country used to be Utrogestin, which is taken orally, but we've now got, what's it called? Jetprotix, is that how we pronounce it?
Well, that's how I want to do it, but I'm dyslexic and call things by the wrong name all the time. And
Fiona did a lovely reel on it maybe about 2 weeks ago, because I've also had lots of people DM me. They never really write on my wall, saying, "Oh my God, I've been prescribed this. What is this? I'm being fobbed off," and they're not being fobbed off. It's still micronized progesterone, body identical, but you can be given, and this is another thing to do with stock issues, is the Utrogestin a lot of it has run out and it's not in stock. And so people have been given synthetics, and then people have panicked. Synthetic progesterones are still, like I say, fine. If you've got no risk factors for clots or, acne or progesterone side effects that aren't going to be particularly harmful to that, or bloating, then they are fine to go on for a short period of time. It's just that you may experience more progesterone side effects. Now, I think, Fiona, you didn't really get on with the Utrogestin, even though it was body identical. And so you tried the Mirena, which is the one I had in early this year, I had mine for endometriosis. The progesterone in it is synthetic. It's levonorgestrel, but it's in such a small amount that is thought to still have almost very, very little risk of developing anything more serious like breast cancer, which the synthetic progesterones were found to have a very small increase in doing, not the estrogen. But the great thing about that, especially when you're in perimenopause, is if you're still having periods, one, it stops the blood flow, or it should do. And another reason I was taking it, because I was anemic, heavy periods in perimenopause. Two, it gives you that extra contraception, which despite taking HRT, you can still get pregnant up until the age of your final period, average about 51. So it means that you've got a contraception. And three, it acts as the HRT. And it doesn't matter how high you go on that estrogen, even if it's on, not unlicensed doses, but higher than we, off-label, we call it, it still protects it. So for me,
at what dose though? If you've got very high doses of estrogen, how do we know how much progesterone we really need? Because there aren't any studies that actually tell us.
No. So it is recommended if you go off label and you go higher than what's in the BNF to increase your estrogen or your whatever progesterone you're taking or your Jetprotix. But the Mirena will cover it. You don't need to take another progesterone on top of the Mirena.
Although I am at the moment, I'm doing both. I'm doing Utrogestin.
And what I was about to say, the Mirena is meant to stop bleeding. Now, both Fiona and I have had heavy bleeds on the Mirena. I had my Mirena fitted in February, had nothing, started HRT, 4 months ago, and I had the most hemorrhagic periods without any warning. I was walking through Gatwick Airport in the passport queue in a white dress with my child asleep on my back, and it was like Niagara Falls. My other child had to cover the massive stain that came with a handbag. And, so it can happen to anyone, even a menopause doctor. You're caught unaware, and I was stuck in a passport queue, and it was awful, and it went on for 10 days. And then it settled, and that's what can happen when you start HRT, because, the estrogen is building that up. And then it's been lightly spotting, but now it should settle after 6 months. If it's not, you can do what Fiona is doing by adding in a progesterone, because again, the progesterone settles the bleeding by sort of keeping that blood stuck to the walls. So how long have you been taking progesterone for?
On and off, because I'll get to a point where I think, oh, it stopped. And then
if you stop the progesterone, unfortunately, then you'll have a withdrawal bleed. Because it's holding the blood, and then it'll let it all fall. Yeah. So you may have that, but then after that, it might not start up again. So it's really difficult.
Oh, it's so annoying, and I'm not the only one here.
No, I know.
Gemma over here is saying, can you get a body identical progesterone that's as strong as a Mirena for stopping very heavy bleeding? As I'm getting too many side effects on the Mirena and bleeding every day. So
it's not the strength really. It's just that your body might need a bit more. So if she's got, again, a Mirena like yourself, like me, you can take a progesterone on top of it. So you can go and take Utrogestin on top of it. You can take other progesterones. There are other ones, they're more synthetic, and we use them when, before menopause or perimenopause, we often add in certain types of progesterones just to stop that bleeding, like northestrone and stuff. But again, you can get side effects. So I would, if you're willing to just take, 100 milligrams of the Utrogestin at night, because the progesterone's got a nice, progesterone is our calming hormone. It keeps our mood stable. And so I would even say, despite Mirena covering you, as it were, safety-wise in the progesterone, if you're having lots of high anxiety and or very low mood, and they are more your symptoms, it may be worth considering adding in a progesterone as well, just to see if that helps. Because it's about balancing the hormones. You don't have to have it from a safety point of view. But what I found is some ladies, they respond really well to progesterone. Some people don't like progesterone. So it really is about trial and error, about what your symptoms are and what you've responded to. You might be one of those people who've always had really bad PMS or have postnatal depression. And they're the people that would respond really well to hormonally treating as opposed to, antidepressants or SSRIs.
God, it's so complicated, isn't it? I mean, just to be clear, I had a Mirena coil, then I had to have it out because it had reached its end of its useful life. Then they wouldn't give me another one because I was too old. So
well, not on the NHS, they wouldn't. Did you get it privately?
Well, in the end, I got it on the NHS after having months and months of bleeding, because I went onto the Utrogest, and it did not control my bleeding at all. So then they put, finally, after 6 months of me going, how much bleeding can one woman do and still remain alive? I am prone to hyperbole. They put the Mirena coil back in, but it's still been messy since then. But yeah, I did not get on it. It made me moody. It made me bloated.
Yeah.
And vaginally, it didn't really do much for me.
Awful, isn't it? No, awful. I'm
and
sorry.
Reflux as well. I even got reflux with it.
Yes, I remember you saying it, and I remember thinking, yeah, because funnily enough, before I started my HRT, when I had the Mirena, I felt really calm. It was really weird. I could feel it when I first had it in, and the progesterone. And reflux did get worse, but now that's settled. So I think it takes a while, and you have to be really in tune with your body, which is sometimes quite hard when you've got a million and other things going on.
Well, sure. And by the time I would have killed everybody around me with the mood, it wouldn't have been good. Would not have been pretty. Is there, because we're sort of coming up to time here, but
yes,
longer than we thought we would. I'm just having a quick look back here over the questions. Still having light bleeding. Total lining is okay. So if you've had a scan and you're still having light bleeding, but the show, then no need to really worry. Just wait till it settles. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've had the scan, so we would say so when you go on to continuous, where you're taking the progesterone every day, it takes 3 or 4 months to settle the bleeding, and then after that we call that unscheduled bleeding, and it would be worth having a scan.
Yeah.
Just to rule out the thickness of the endometrium, because what we're looking for is abnormal thickness and growth within that endometrial layer. And it still doesn't mean endometrial cancer. And it could be called something called endometrial hyperplasia, which then has a risk of then going on into endometrial cancer.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting stuff. Although if you're postmenopausal, the risk isn't as high as apparently with hyperplasia, which is interesting.
Yeah, because you're taking the hormones that kind of keep it at bay as well. So I think we covered everything. I'm just trying to think if we didn't, but I think
there's one other question here that going back to the Lenzetto. Do you put it, when you're putting it on, are you moving it down the arm if you're doing 3 pumps?
So 2 pumps. Yeah, where is it? 2 pumps, 1 pump, and then I did 3, so I did it on the other arm, and then you can, yeah. So it's basically different parts because it needs to cover that whole patch.
And you mentioned priming it. Is that just the first time you use it, or do you have to prime it?
The first time. So it comes with a little lid. I've got it down there, but it comes with a little lid, and you think it's 3 times. 1, 2, 3. I've done an actual reel on each of these where it's very quick. It's only a minute just going through how you actually 1, 2, 3, and then do it, because then you don't get a full dose. So again, with the estrel, sometimes I would get a big blob, sometimes I get slightly different blob, so it makes me feel sometimes like I'm not getting quite the right dose. And that's another reason I think, well, I like the Sandrina, I know I'm getting the whole milligram.
We need to go back and look at that, because I remember was one of the people with POI was measuring it out every day and getting.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah,
we need to go back and find out what happened.
Literally grams and seeing it. But no, if anyone wants to ask me any questions, I've got a very small little Instagram channel, so please just ask away. But yeah, it's just very useful going forward, and I will do my trial for a bit longer.
Brilliant. All right. So when people want to find you, where do they find you so they can ask you these questions?
So you can either find me on Instagram, Dr Elise Dallas, or I work in Harley Street at the London General Practice. And that's it. I'm just about to join TikTok and YouTube, but that's a work in progress.
Exactly. Brilliant. All right. Well, I will love you and leave you there, because otherwise it won't allow me to do this. I will end this on the Instagram first, and ending now. And let me share that. Okay. And I will end it over here as well. Thank you very, very much. And I will speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.